Welcome!
Alright, time for another Tokusatsu recommendation. This time I'll be talking about a series from the Metal Hero franchise. A great line of Tokusatsu shows I feel that was very unique among a lot of its contemporaries. Though if you want to know more about the Metal Hero franchise, I did make a video on it in the past. The Metal Hero series I'll be recommending today is the superhuman machine Metalder, who might look a bit familiar due to the series' sort of American adaptation in VR Troopers. Metalder was a series that initially got my interest strictly due to its influence from a Shotaro Ishinomori and Japanese superhero classic, Android Kikaider. Anyways, this series tells the story of the android Metalder, who was originally meant to be a weapon for the Japanese military, but was soon put away by his creator, Dr. Koga, after his son died in World War II, whom Metalder was modeled after. Mourning his son, Dr. Koga became a pacifist, going off to America to join NASA. However, years later, an old colleague of his pretty much went insane and now goes under the title of God Neros, leader of the Neros Empire, which controls the world's criminal underground and responsible for countless tragedies around the world. I mean, we're talking about wars, famine, assassinations. These guys do not fuck around. Knowing the atrocities the Neros Empire will continue to make if not stopped, Dr. Koga returns back to Japan to activate Metalder as humanity's last hope. However, while Dr. Koga was able to activate Metalder, he's soon assassinated by the Neros army. Fueled by anger, Metalder vows to destroy the Neros Empire and bring peace to the world under the human persona of Tsurugi Ryusei. Luckily, he doesn't have to go at it alone, as throughout the series he comes across some allies, both human and reformed bad guys. The story of Metalder follows a more typical Monster of the Week type formula, while occasionally having some two-parters and recurring plot threads, making it not too hard to binge when compared to a lot of more strictly episodic series. Especially so that in this series, both sides are constantly searching for each other's weaknesses, leaders, and bases, leaving an air of intensity each episode, leading to a pretty dramatic last batch of episodes. Unfortunately, Metalder as a series was cut a bit short, due to it being a little too dark for kids. It's still a fun Toku series with plenty of messages of hope, forgiveness, and justice one would normally expect from a Toku series. However, the actions and occasional backstories of various soldiers of the Neros Empire were a bit dark, leading to some bleak ends in a good handful of episodes. However, it isn't until the final act here where things really ramp up, with both sides of the conflict here taking some great losses. Despite being cut short, Metalder still wraps up pretty well, leaving behind a pretty somber ending. Of course, one of the many things that make Tokusatsu shows so cool is the cool Tokusatsu heroes, and Metalder himself is pretty sweet. I love his design. It takes heavy inspiration from Android Kikaider, but in my opinion improves it. This just might be one of my favorite Tokusatsu costumes out there. Seeing Metalder slice through enemies with his signature laser arm never gets old, which is good as for the most part, that's his go-to move in his pretty small list of moves. Also, as much as I love Metalder, I gotta admit, his hero vehicles are pretty sad. He has the Side Phantom, which is a cool flying motorcycle, and then there's the Metal Charger, which is just a car. I don't care if it has a cool name and that it can technically fly, it's still just a car. They could have at least gave it like a cool paint job or something to match Metalder, but no, it's just a car. But going back to Metalder himself, he's a likable hero of justice when he's in his true form, and when he's going under the persona of Tsurugi Ryusei, he's learning about human emotions and reconnecting with memories of Dr. Koga's son. Unlike Metalder's inspiration, I don't feel the tragedy and conflict of feeling like a human while being a machine was done quite as well, with only a few episodes ever really touching on it. But what really makes Metalder a cool character is his overall good nature and strong heroic spirit, which is able to shine through not only to the viewers, but also a lot of his enemies, leaving a lot of them to want to strive for good, or at least fight honorably. Which leads us to Top Gunder, a badass sniper android with inspirations from Kikaider's famous Hakaider, who was once a pretty respected member of the Neros Empire until he betrayed it all after being moved by Metalder's honor, becoming one of his most reliable and badass allies. Also, he's a killer sniper robot with a bullet for a head. That's pretty fucking cool, dude. And really that just holds true for the entire series. Metalder and Top Gunner both kick ass, and there's tons of cool designs to be found in the series, even outside the Neros army, which is already full of varied and unique designs. But then you also got a lot of cool sets like the bases of our heroes and villains here, tons of really cool shots and fight scenes, and of course, loads of explosions. God, I love these explosions. However, the true stars of Metalder surprisingly is the Neros Empire. For once in a Toku series, I am actually way more invested in the villain group than the heroes, but I feel the series really went all out with the concept of the Neros Empire. God Neros himself is the typical evil leader, spending most of his time just sitting on his throne telling his armies what to do. However, as the series goes on, we learn more about his backstory, revealing that he is quite the evil bastard. Throughout the series, there's little tidbits of the Empire's schemes going on overseas, with some members of the army we see getting introduced in some episodes actually returning to Japan from a war they were just in, which really sells the Neros Empire as this legitimate worldwide threat that needs to be stopped at all costs. In a lot of Toku shows, we hear that the villains want to take over the world, but for the most part, it just seems like that specific part of Japan our heroes happen to reside in. But here you get reminded that plenty of these dudes are committing all sorts of chaos around the world, which makes Metalder's search for Neros' base all the more gripping. However, the best part of the Neros Empire is the army itself, which is made of 4 factions. We have the Monster Army, which consists of deadly mutants, the Battle Robot Army full of killer robots and androids, the Armament Army, which is made of humans and cyborgs wearing armor, and finally, the Mechanical Army, which is full of heavy-duty firepower robots, which feels a bit redundant due to the Battle Robot Army, but I guess 4 evil factions is better than 3. Regardless, having these factions in the army spices up the episodes here, giving us a wide range of varied villains to go up against each episode, with the different factions either working together or clashing with each other in order to kill Metalder and receive praise from God Neros. Metalder even fights against these different factions in different ways, tending to show a little bit more mercy to members of the Armament Army since a lot of them are technically still human. Though for almost everyone else he will not show mercy. But honestly, in a lot of these episodes, I was way more invested in the Neros army than I was with Metalder, surprisingly. And I think that's because this series does a really good job in giving the bad guys a pretty decent amount of screen time, sometimes even taking up a majority of an episode. For example, there's an episode that pretty much follows the Neros Empire doing this sports festival-like event, which was really fun and engaging without Metalder. Also, props to the suit actors, especially in this episode, as moving around in some of these suits must be already pretty hard, but then in this episode we have them doing an athletic event in them. It's crazy. Due to a lot of these episodes having this focus on the armies, we get to become really familiar with these guys, especially since a lot of them we technically see in the first episode. That one background guy one episode might be the main threat in the next, and this level of familiarity with what are essentially the henchmen is something I've never come across before. Some of these guys we really get time to learn about, understanding their motivations and backstories, with a lot of them wanting to climb up the ranks of the Empire, but for different reasons. Also, yes, there is a surprisingly detailed ranking system in the Neros Empire, which is a cause for a lot of internal conflict among the 4 armies. Sure, there's some pretty despicable guys in the Empire that just want to rank up and become part of the Neros elite, but then you also have some more honorable ones that just want to rank up in order to show the superiority of their respective faction. And then you just got guys that simply want to rank up in order to gain respect among their peers, as this ranking system is not just a symbol of power within the Empire, but it's also like a social hierarchy ranking, with the lower ranked soldiers being the most disrespected in the Empire, leading to some pretty interesting storylines of those desperate to break out of their low rank, leading to one of the most tragic storylines of the series with Heterogros, a low-ranking monster who many in the Empire constantly bully for being pathetic, with the only one believing in him being Wisdom, a prisoner of the Empire who Heterogros wants to have a family with. It's kind of weird, especially since in the episode she's referred to as a slave woman, which really has me questioning just what the fuck is happening in the underground of this empire. But despite that, in the episode itself, it does seem like a genuine relationship. However, of course, Hedorgross has to face off against Metalder in order to prove himself, and it's obvious, but spoilers, he dies, leaving behind a widow and his soon-to-be mutant son, both of which get their own tragic episode, in which Metalder has to take responsibility, which I was not expecting at all to come out of this series. Hedorgross is not the only tragic soldier of the Neros Empire. Like I mentioned earlier, Metalder inspires a good amount of these soldiers to be better, leading them to break away from the Empire and sometimes make great personal sacrifices. Not all of the soldiers of Neros are completely evil. Some of them are people who are either tricked or forced to join. Others have troubled pasts that they were trying to escape, only to continue to make bad choices. And some of them are simply just robots or mutants who've discovered emotions, honor, and people or things that they themselves want to protect, in which fighting Metalder really sparked within them. I am still shocked by the level of detail and love that was put into the Neros Empire. Characters that could have easily just been generic monsters of the week with barely any personality beyond wanting to destroy Metalder became some of the most memorable I've seen in Tokusatsu. Overall, Metalder is a super memorable series that I highly recommend. It's got some great suits, plenty of fantastic shots and scenes, an interesting storyline with plenty of great one-offs, and of course, the Neros Empire, which is now one of my favorite Tokusatsu villain organizations. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this video and check out Metalder if you haven't. If you have checked out Metalder, feel free to tell me about it in the comments down below. And as always, I am Mr.FalconPunch. Stay safe, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.
こいつはすごいぜ。